Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lendingkart Leadership Podcast.
In this series, you get to hear our esteemed leaders answer some very serious and some not so serious questions.
Tune in for some candid conversations.
Today, we have with us Dhanesh Padmanabhan, who, as we all heard in a town hall, is a passionate biker and heads data sciences at Lendingkart. Welcome, Dhanesh, to the podcast.
Hi, Kenny. Nice to be this podcast.
Okay, so I'd like to begin by saying that Dinesh, the data science, is a combination of two very big words. So tell us that, unlike all those other scientists, do you have like a lab where you experiment with data, you do slicing, testing, and all of that? Actually, I'd just like you to please simplify data sciences for our audiences.
We don't have a lab per se. We don't have people with like lab coats and all running around the office floor. But we work very closely with data. We work very closely with various teams, be it the operations team, business teams, product or tech, slicing and dicing data, asking questions of the data, making sure it's right, making sure our analysis is correct. Yeah, so I think lot of data science is actually grunt work. Of course, there are lot more fancy, AI and machine learning models also that can come out of it. But the most important thing is to make sure, you understand the data well, that it models the process correctly, so you can actually derive the right insights of it and also build the right models out of it.
Very well. So what excites you most about data sciences and why did you choose to be in this field?
Sure. I think it was more of a progression into this field and how the industry itself evolved. Right. I've been 19 years in this industry, and I started out more as a research scientist, right, doing mathematical modeling and simulations in automotive industry, looking at marketing problems, analytics, and so on. But then, digital sort of happened, all big tech, social media, and all these sort of big tech revolutions happened, and now the data itself, changed, right, overnight, and the kind of things you could do with data, right? Change the problem statements, different, also changed, right, in marketing and so on. So I think the first time data science, those words were used were actually more in the technology world, right? How, because of so much data coming in, so what we can do with this data and so on, right? I like mathematics a lot. That's what I kind of started, getting excited about in younger days. Then I also started getting interested in technology a lot during the engineering days, and I was a geek, right? Just glued to the computer and just trying out random things. So I think that's where I kind of found data science as a good place where you can kind of satisfy both those sort of likings, right? It touches technology, it touches the mathematical side of things. They're very interesting AI algorithms, machine learning algorithms, and so you don't lose touch of both sides. And what I like most about data science is you need to understand the data really well, how the data is generated. You need to think either from a user standpoint or from a process standpoint, how the product works, and then what you can do with it, right? So that's what I like about it.
Very interesting to know. And now that you're in Lendingkart, which is a fintech, so and it said that we are the data house with more than 5 billion data points that we have collected and evaluated. So how complicated or not complicated is working in a fintech with respect to data?
Um, One thing, right? I think finance industry actually adopted statistics very early, right? Statistical modeling techniques very early on, like credit risk models, and if you follow the history of how lending and all this, systems came about on maintaining credit histories, how to do underwriting. It's a very sort of old and sort of well established area, right? Um, and if you actually see, I mean, a lot of the problems that the AI world is grappling with in terms of explainability and not like building, how to sort of make these black box models sort of make be a bit more reasonable in terms of the decisions that they take and all that. Those sort of challenges sort of didn't really exist in the finance world because they built things ground up in an explainable manner, and there were very rigorous practices put in place. So I think that way we also follow some of that here, right? We have people who have expertise working in bureaus who have built uh, credit risk score models and things like that, right? So we follow good processes there where we basically build models using traditional data sources like credit bureau or cash flows.
No, that's right. And I think as we're evolving, we're collecting data to sort of also provide personalized solution to customers, right? So
Absolutely.
how do you see this lending cards business changing in the future with more data flowing in?
Yes, so I think, like you said, it's all about engaging with the customer, um, making sure we do our digital communications, properly through AI, right? How do we kind of bring them back, bring if they're existing customers and so on. And you know we can get these signals, right? Once they have our app and right, or if they are frequently visiting our website, then we can figure out the need of the customer and appropriately reach out. um, but we can also combine these with this data sources with our existing data sources that we use for underwriting and see how we can use that to better either prioritize or underwrite um, um, these customers, right? So I think that is where we will evolve to. We'll have multiple stages of interventions, right? Be it outbound or post that. How do we sort of filter and uh, I think that's where we are kind of getting to. Um, all done in a very digital way.
Yeah, absolutely. And when a lot of data is being collected, the conversation that arises is the security aspect of it. Most people today are becoming aware that the data is being used by so many companies at different touch points. Like our apps, right? They know where we live, what we eat, what we order, etc. So, what are your views on data privacy and data security at Lending?
Yes, so I've been through, GDPR implementation in one of the companies I've worked, and I think a lot of the new guidelines that RBI also has rolled out, it's fairly similar
Right.
in terms of right to access to data, right of deletion, and so on, right? So we'll have to build systems that can basically satisfy those requirements, and it's I think absolutely on board with implementing these, because I think it's the basic right of every customer to be able to access their information and give consent, what can be used and what cannot be used. And of course, I mean, once they use our services, and Lendingkart also has, uh, consent to use information to make sure the business runs smoothly as well, right? So these are not hard to do. I mean, the big tech firms have done it, and I know, our engineering team also has put a lot of this in place already. Um, so there are some, I think, basic things that can be done in terms of securing our data, right, and make sure how we guard it, how do we store PII information, and these are basic things that we're already doing. There are more interesting things like differential privacy, and how do you build models which don't really get in some of the PII information. We are not affected by it so much now, but when we expand to other data sources, I think some of those aspects might also play a factor.
Yeah, good to know. So I've actually asked you, about data science and Lendingkart, but I think I should also ask you your journey till Lendingkart. Where were you before this, and why did you decide to come to Lendingkart?
Yeah, so I've been like close to 2 decades in the industry. My first sort of 9 or 10 years, I was more into research and analytics. The next 10 years, I was working in organizations which were also building technology products. So 24/7 AI, Truecaller, and then Genpact was part of the digital organization building data and ML platforms. And yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I mean, I like both the data science and the technology fields, right? So I kind of sort of gravitated towards a more technology-oriented role. And fintech, it's just just so happened, reached out by a few other headhunters, but like the discussions with the leadership, and also I know fintech is very happening in India, so I thought we'll take the dive.
It really is. Surely it's a very happening one.
Yes.
And I'm sure that in your in your career there must have been very many projects that you've built using advanced data analytics and machine learning. Would you like to share the most memorable one in terms of impact or in terms of innovation that you've built or you've worked on?
I think there's several. Can't put a finger on any single one. I think impact-wise, I think there's several we did at 24/7 AI, or at Truecaller. There were a few projects we did on ads side, right, figuring out user segments through more machine learning techniques, and use that segments to basically get publishers to bid for them and so on, right? And that worked out well, especially in Truecaller. In 24/7 AI, we're looking at a lot of intent prediction models to figure out what a customer is looking for, when they're coming to, say, a website, or getting on an idea of of one of the enterprises we were helping, and kind of build a sort of like a 360-degree view of their journeys, and kind of get the context into multiple channels that they are interfacing with, and give them the right sort of engagement, like basic personalization sort of use case. So there, of course, there's a lot of A/B testing happening and so on, right? And the thing to remember is these are programs, and you would have multiple AI playbooks, and different sort of interventions that you would plan, and then do a test and figure out whether it works or not. And and I think impact-wise, I would say, I think few use cases, there were very good learnings, and this was more to do with understanding customer behavior. What kind of AI strategy works well, in one one industry versus another. Like for example, if you take like a very high value consumer product like buying a laptop, it takes a lot of time for someone to decide, right, to buy it. And there actually we found online help, helps a lot. So there, some of these AI-driven interventions was adding a lot of value even for the conversions. But it wasn't that effective if you wanted to look at a use case like somebody wanted to say transfer money, right, to somebody abroad or something like that. That's a much very quick transaction, right? So there the help was a bit more different. So mostly about customer service and things like that. Right? People wanted to know more about if the money reached on time and things like that. So the more CSAT is what we could influence there. So,
Wow. Anything in Lendingkart that you're working on that you can talk to us about?
yes, better underwriting, improving conversions by optimizing the funnel at various stages, trying to give better pricing. Also, sort of improving the underwriting for some new programs that we're doing, right, with channel partners, our existing customers for the renewal businesses. Better matching algorithms for our co-lending platform, better pricing recommendations.
In our last podcast, we basically spoke to Giri, and he said that he's not a data sharer. He doesn't even give out names when he goes to get his coffee. What about you? I mean, you have been in the data field for so long. Are you comfortable sharing data, or do you not share it? You can see data.
It depends on the context. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody is quite wary about sharing their personal information, right? So I think I basically have the same guardrails that anybody has in terms of safeguarding their social profiles and all that, right? But I think certain things, I do like to share, like especially reviews. I do post quite a bit of reviews on Google, and if there's a restaurant I went to and I liked it or didn't like it, I definitely post. And I was doing that on Zomato also at one point. A bit of a foodie, so I kind of like that whole community thing that they had created, and I used to share. I used to post a lot about the dishes I ate and share pictures and things like that. I think there's no central like consumer forum, and I think there sometimes I feel, at least feel a social responsibility that I should share my views, so others can learn from my mistake or experiences.
Well, okay. So what are the absolute no's? Like, for example, do you like give out your actual names and numbers when you're, let's say, getting coffee or, just going out partying or something? Or do you like, are there any absolute no's that don't, now I will not give, like, here I'll not give any information about me?
No, not that, not as picky as Giri.
For sure. Okay. And this is something that I've actually wanted to ask you since the beginning of the podcast, because you're this data scientist, right? So is there a part of you that analyzes data in personal life as well? Like, let's suppose if you plan your biking trip, are you sitting and figuring out data that are helping you make decisions? Is it something that happens that comes with just being you?
No, actually, I'm a very different person in real life. I just go with the flow, and most, I believe that most of the unplanned things usually tend to become very memorable, especially trips and stuff like that. So usually, don't over plan, most of the things in my personal life.
Good. You mentioned about not over planning your trips and also what is the last trip that you've been to? And you can also tell us from a biking trip that you've taken.
Yes. So last trip, we actually did a bike ride to Yelagiri, which is a small hill station near Vellore, Tamil Nadu. And this is the first time I was taking the big bike that I have, which is a 300 kg super bike. I had to try out, all this hairpin twisties. And
What bike is
it's a
this?
it's a BMW uh, 1250 GS.
Wow. So 300
It's a
kg
heavy
bike.
bike. It's a 300 kg bike. So you have to be really good in maneuvering the bike. There's a lot of skill also involved, especially at slow speeds. High speeds, of course, that's a no breeze, right? It's a breeze to drive it. Yeah, so it was interesting. That was one trip, and before that, I was in Thailand around September, and this was actually a dirt biking trip, and I should say, sort of conned into it. I didn't, I didn't, I didn't realize how difficult it was. I was quite sore for almost 10 days after that. That was very, very good. That was very interesting. We were driving these dirt bikes in, um, off-road terrains and, trails and things like that. You have to like jump over rocks and, fallen trees and things like that. It
Full
was very,
adventure.
it was adventure, and I was really, really sore for 10 days after that.
So tell our audiences, how did you get into this entire biking thing, right? How did it start for you? And what's the first bike that you owned when you started this?
Yeah, so, growing up as a kid, my dad never let me touch a bike, and it was always there in back of my mind I should, learn someday and all that. Um, so almost 19 years ago, I think I got my first bike, 18 or 19 years back, and it was a Honda, like just a 135 cc bike. And then briefly I drove SD also, like a used SD. But then I got into cars and didn't quite. I mean, the whole thing didn't catch on so much because it was still not, easy to drive in Indian conditions and all that. But a lot of friends suddenly started getting into biking post-COVID. People were just buying like Harleys and all these like very fancy bikes in our community, and I thought, let me at least start with a small 350 cc bike and just go along with them. But it's been good because I'm sort of relearning biking, in a formal way.
Yeah.
And I think it's been fun.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely fun. So biking is one way you unwind. What are the other ways you unwind when you're not working?
Yeah, I watch a lot of TV, so Netflix, uh, Hotstar, and all that.
Hmm.
Um, Other than that, we do travel quite a bit. Uh, so my wife, she actually does a bit of wildlife photography.
Oh wow.
She's actually like full-time wildlife photographer, and I say a bit it's overly understated. Uh, so so we do travel quite a bit. Um, so the last we went to, where was it? It's been a while actually, I can't remember now. But we've been to Papua New Guinea once.
Wow.
We're planning one for, I think, Kenya again. Been to Kenya once. Uh, so,
Oh, amazing. I can just imagine the amazing pictures you might take on the trip.
yeah.
Wow. Lovely. Okay. So I just have a last question. We are so dependent on technology, right? So if there was one thing that technology could replace in your life, what would that be?
Technology could replace one thing in my life.
Yeah. What would that be?
Um, Somebody who can like, I don't mind like a personal assistant or was like a bot or something. can remind me. I'm sure my wife would like that because she's tired reminding me things.
Uh, Thank you so much, Dhanesh, for your time. It was great talking to you.
Likewise.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit like and share. मिलते हैं अगली बार with some real insights on leadership and the industry.